we're just going to keep plugging, and we're continuing to raise money. And I think the calendar, we're going to do fine here. I'm not going to predict we're going to win here, but when we get to Pennsylvania, we get to New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Let me tell you, I drop out, Donald Trump is absolutely going to be the nominee.
Ohio Governor John Kasich is feeling the pressure to end his bid for the White House after failing to win any state primaries besides his home state.
He has no path to the nomination. It's mathematically impossible for John Kasich to become the Republican nominee. He needs more than 100% of the remaining delegates. And it's worth remembering, Kasich went 0 for 27, lost 27 states in a row.
Ted Cruz is not the only one calling for Kasich's exit. In a new article on Newsmax.com, CEO Chris Ruddy also urges Kasich to get out. In the article, he writes, Bush's embrace of outsider Cruz now unites both the establishment and conservative wings of the Republican Party behind him. The bottom line now is very clear, he says. The establishment wing of the party sees no chance of John Kasich winning and knows that only a two-man race will allow voters to find a candidate the GOP can unite behind. And joining us now is the author of that article, Newsmax Media CEO Chris Ruddy, also joining us, host of The Hard Line, seeing weekdays right here after Newsmax Now, Ed Berliner. Thank you, gentlemen, both for joining us.
Pleasure.
Chris, we're going to start with you. Cruz has received several key endorsements, especially recently. Why Jeb Bush's? Why is that especially critical to Cruz and the so-called nail in the coffin for Kasich's campaign?
Well, Miranda, I think it's pretty clear Jeb probably would have preferred to endorse John Kasich. They were governors. They both share a number of similar approaches. But the math is not there, just like that clip you showed of Ted Cruz. The math shows that John Kasich would need to win 117% of the existing delegates in all the races to win. So it's a mathematical impossibility for him to win. All he can do, and John's saying, well, I may win here, I may win there. All John can do is create a brokered convention, potentially, and he probably won't even do this, potentially deny Trump the 1,237 votes he needs for a majority on the first ballot, and then it would go to a brokered convention. And it's the point of my article on Newsmax today that would not be good. First of all, John's not going to win a brokered convention, and second of all, it would not be good for the country to go through and the Republican Party to go through and have a second ballot fight.
Chris, you're right. John Kasich is a smart man. He knows his math. Look, some of the math tells us that he's actually barely trailing Trump in the Pennsylvania primary right now. I think it's 36 to 33%. A lot of voters there are undecided. But do you think that at this point, John Kasich, for whatever reason, he may be delusional, as some believe, but he's hanging around because he wants to be vice president of Donald Trump? I mean, seriously, what else could he possibly hope to gain out of this?
Well, Ed, I discussed that in the article. I say there's two scenarios. Either one is he thinks he can cut a deal with Trump and become the vice president. I think that would be terrible for the Republican ticket because you would have Trump, who's not really liked anymore by the conservative base. In almost every primary among voters who describe themselves as very conservative, Trump has lost to Ted Cruz. So Trump needs to balance it out with a conservative running mate, not John Kasich. And the other thing is, I think, again, it's the party bosses coming in and deciding and picking the candidate. John thinks that there's going to be a ballot fight and that he'll emerge as the unifier of the party. He is delusional. I think, and I have a very high respect for John. He was a great governor of Ohio. I think he would make a great president. But he cannot win the Republican nomination, and he cannot unite the party.
Well, we've been hearing for quite some time that we are more than likely headed for a brokered convention and that the RNC is preparing for that. You have called Reince Priebus basically a disaster for the Republican Party.
He has been, yes. I mean, I think if you had a strong party, we would have never been in the situation we're in today. And some of the things that have gone on in this primary, in the back and forth, and we're now having one candidate, which I disagree with, saying that he's not showing up at debates, Republican debates. I think that's bad for the party, and it's a sign. You know, Miranda, the special interests came in, these PACs, They've really come to eclipse the party. But what they all forgot was the party still controls the primary process in the convention. And so we can't sort of allow the party to be handled by lightweights and amateurs. And I'm afraid that Reince fits into that category. He's really been a disaster. And I think that Trump is, look, Trump would make a very strong candidate. I'm not sounding like I don't want to sound like I'm against Donald Trump. I believe whoever wins that convention should win it on the first ballot and get a majority of votes. And the only way we're going to have that happen is for Ted Cruz and Donald Trump to go to the finish line here and have a two-man race.
Chris, I love your use of the word lightweights and amateurs, because I think I've been saying that on my show now for a couple of months when it comes down to the RNC leadership. Is it not fair to say, though, that the time is right? Whether you like Donald Trump, hate him, loathe him, doesn't make a difference. The time is right for blowing up the GOP in some sense. Get rid of these lightweights and amateurs, clean it out, and bring in some new blood, some new faces.
Well, I think you're right. You know, I steal all my best lines listening to your show, Ed. So
Smart
I just
man.
have to admit that and be upfront.
Nothing from Newsmax now, really?
Miranda, it's okay. Please,
No,
let's see.
I'm
Let
just
us see.
playing. I'm playing.
But I absolutely, I think that we're seeing that there's too much inside political, and what the Trump effect and what the voters are basically saying is they want a clean slate. You're absolutely right. This is what the message is. Mm-hmm. And everybody's trying to kill the messenger, which is Donald Trump here, but his message is an important one. And one of the things I think Ted Cruz answers is he's an outsider. He's not liked by the insiders. And I think why Cruz has a very good shot at the nomination and why so many people are rallying to him is they realize that he will not only bring in the establishment people like Jeb Bush, but he will also bring in the Trump voters who might feel angry that Trump didn't get the nomination. So I think it's a really good competition between the two of them. John Kasich's, whatever his goals are, either to get the vice presidency or to lead to a broken convention, both of those goals are bad for the party and bad for the country.
Chris Ruddy, Newsmax Media CEO. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to hear from him.
Of course, he likes the
steal
show.
lines
That's
from you. He
most
likes
important, all right? That's
he
fine
likes
with
to
me.
steal your lines. What do you think about that? So what do you have cooking tonight?
The biggest problem that we face in Brussels is the fact that no one's looking at. The EU is out of control. There's a problem with law enforcement there. Brussels has admitted that basically they screwed the pooch on this one, and they may have cost people their lives. We have to focus on getting the EU right so that America can work with them, get our intel right, find and catch the killers.
All right. And you can watch The Hardline right after Newsmax Now, beginning at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Still to come here on Newsmax Now, we're going to be talking about your comments. What do you think about what Chris Ruddy said?